I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the history of EEG biofeedback or neurofeedback. This is an amazing technology that's been around for quite a while, and it's interesting to hear, like most things, how this developed kind of serendipitously. But the history of EEG biofeedback goes back to the late 60s and early 70s. NASA was working with a rocket fuel, and they liked the rocket fuel, but one of the side effects was that the rocket fuel caused the technicians who were using it to have seizures. So they liked the rocket fuel, but obviously didn't want to have the technicians have seizures. So they contacted a psychologist at UCLA named Barry Sterman. Dr. Sterman is famous for doing research on cats' brains. What he would do would put little sensors inside the brain of cats to figure out which part of the brain was responsible for certain activities. So he would look at aggression, appetite, sex drive, hunger, and motor movement, and then he would plot out which part of the brain was responsible for those things, which gave us much insight into human beings and how our brains work. So they sent the rocket fuel to Dr. Sterman, and he had about 300 experimental cats that he was using, doing different experiments with. He exposed all of his cats to the rocket fuel, and they all had seizures except for one group of cats, maybe 10 cats in a certain section. And he was like, well, that's strange. Why didn't these cats have seizures and all the other cats did? So he pulled out their experimental record and was going through, finding out what he did differently with these cats than the other cats. And these were cats that he had reinforced what's called the sensory motor rhythm. This is at 14 cycles per second. So if you've ever held a cat on your lap and you're stroking her, and all of a sudden you hear her motor start running, she starts purring, it's a state of kind of a state of bliss or relax, complete relaxation. So when cats are in this totally relaxed state, they're at 14 cycles per second. Or when we as human beings are lying on the beach listening to the ocean waves and we're just totally at peace, our brain is producing 14 cycles per second. This is called the sensory motor rhythm. So as all scientists, he was like, aha, we have something here. So he began reinforcing the 14 cycles per second with the other cats that he had, and sure enough, he was able to inhibit seizure activity for these cats when he exposed them to the rocket fuel. So then they began working with humans, and they began reinforcing the 14 cycles per second with the humans, and indeed noticed that seizure activity for these individuals stopped as well. So this was the beginning of EEG biofeedback or neurofeedback. But back then, in the late 60s and early 70s, computers were, maybe 10 feet by 6 feet or something like that. They were pretty big, so there weren't too many places in the country where they were doing this. But they noticed, as they were working with the people with seizure activity, that one of the side effects was that these people noticed that their concentration and attention span started to improve as well. And so one of Dr. Sterman's graduate assistants, Dr. Joel Lubar, who later moved to the University of Tennessee, he began working with attention deficit disorder with the neurofeedback. In the late 80s, early 90s, an engineer named Siegfried Othmer had a son with severe learning disabilities. He came across the research of Dr. Sterman, and like most engineers, he was like, oh, well, I can figure out a program and I can put that on the PC, the personal computer. So with the advent of the personal computer, Siegfried Othmer then was able to write software to put this EEG biofeedback onto the personal computer. And since that time, about the early 90s, this began moving into the public domain where different clinicians could now begin using this in their own office. I began doing this in 1995. My father had a stroke and lost his ability to speak. As I was doing research on how to help my father, I came across neurofeedback and found that one of the people who was writing software for this had helped his father-in-law recover his ability to speak after he had had a stroke. So I was like, wow, that would be awesome. That'd be great. At the same time, I had a client, a 5-year-old boy, just the cutest little guy that you'd ever seen, but he was extremely hyperactive. And it just broke my heart for me to think of, oh no, they're going to put this little boy on drugs for the next 15 years, and he's going to lose his vibrant personality and become a zombie. There's got to be a better way. And so in 1995, I began doing EEG biofeedback and have been doing it since that time, and have just had seen wonderful results with children, adults. I've worked with people from 4 years old up to about 84 years of age. Basically, anything that involves the central nervous system is something that can benefit from EEG biofeedback. It doesn't have to be a pathology, but we can work with anxiety, depression, seizures, migraines, sleep disorders, attention deficit disorder, reactive attachment disorder, post-traumatic syndromes. So there are many applications. Even drug addiction, alcohol addiction can respond positively to EEG biofeedback. But you don't have to have a pathology. The Spanish soccer team that won the World Cup last year, they've been doing EEG biofeedback for a number of years. So this tunes the brain up to help it work more efficiently. Several of the athletes at the last Olympics credited their gold medal to doing the same type of EEG biofeedback that I do with my clients. So whether for peak performance or rehabilitation, EEG biofeedback is somewhat of a new approach that helps people. And one of the nice things, I work with a lot of children, and typically children don't like coming in to talk to a psychologist or a shrink and share their feelings with them. But kids love coming here because we make it fun. So when they're doing the EEG biofeedback, I use a separate computer and have them do some psychoeducational games that work on processing speed, visual perceptual coordination, frustration tolerance. So we're kind of training their brain in other areas as well as doing the biofeedback, and the kids are more or less playing games, and I'll do some talk therapy with them. I'll also work with the parents on some parenting techniques. So we try to work with the whole system, the parents, the family, the school. The biofeedback is one of the approaches that we use, but we again use a holistic approach to work with them. But the point is that the kids love coming, they have fun, and the time goes by quickly. And I know that each time they come, they're making changes in their lives. I use the analogy of comparing this to watching grass grow. So each time a person comes in, their brain is making a slight shift or adjustment. You can't see it right away, but over time you can begin to see these adjustments. And I'm going to show you next some ways that we monitor the progress that people make. We keep a weekly log of their results, and the parents mark this, and I'll show you what some of the results are that we see with these adults and children.